My name is Claire Bennett, and the night my marriage nearly collapsed began with 4 words. Doubt. Anything. But all I saw was distance. And somehow, that hurt more than rage ever could. Then Diane, his mother, stepped forward. She didn't hesitate. She didn't soften her tone. She pointed directly at me with a stare colder than winter glass. Get out of my house. That was the moment everything broke. But 3 hours earlier, my world had still felt perfectly normal. I was standing in my kitchen rinsing strawberries while my 2-year-old son, Ethan, sat in his high chair humming happily to himself. Yogurt covered one cheek, and when I wiped it away, he burst into laughter like I'd told the funniest joke in the world. Then my phone rang. My husband. You're calling early, I said, smiling as I tucked the phone between my shoulder and ear. Yeah, he answered. Something about his voice felt wrong immediately. Tight. Controlled. Can you come to my mom's tonight? I frowned. Tonight? She's doing a family dinner. Wants everyone there by 6. I glanced at the clock. It was barely after 3. That's sudden. She just planned it, he said quickly. It's important. There was a pause. A strange one. Is everything okay? I asked carefully. Yeah, he answered too fast. Just come. Then he hung up. I stood there staring at my phone while silence settled heavily around me. Ethan reached for another strawberry, completely unaware that something had shifted. I told myself I was overthinking. Diane loved surprise gatherings. Family dinners. Last-minute events. Control was practically her favorite hobby. Still, unease followed me all afternoon. By 5:45, Ethan was dressed in his little blue button-up shirt, and I'd changed into a white floral dress simple enough to look effortless. Everything appeared normal. But the second I pulled into Diane's driveway, my stomach tightened. Every car was already there. My husband's SUV. Karen's sedan. His uncle's truck. Even cousin Mark's ancient car that only appeared during important family matters. That's a lot of people, I whispered. Ethan clapped excitedly from his car seat. I carried him up the walkway and knocked once. The door opened immediately. Diane stood there. No smile. No greeting. Just 2 cold words. Come in. The air inside felt heavy. Wrong. I stepped into the living room and stopped dead. Everyone was seated in a semicircle. Not around the dining table. Around me. Conversations died instantly. Every eye turned in my direction. Ethan shifted uneasily against my shoulder. Hi, I said weakly. No one answered. My husband stood near the window. He didn't walk over. Didn't kiss Ethan. Didn't even look at me properly. Instead, he stepped forward holding a sealed envelope. Sit down, Diane ordered. I didn't move. What is this? My husband handed me the envelope silently. My fingers suddenly felt numb as I opened it. The moment I saw the words DNA test results, a hollow feeling spread through my chest. Then I saw the result. And my husband finally spoke. The child isn't mine. The room instantly transformed into a courtroom. And I was already guilty. For a moment, I couldn't hear anything. My heartbeat thundered in my ears while Ethan buried his face against my shoulder, sensing the tension children always notice before adults admit it exists. That's not true, I whispered. No one responded. That silence hurt worse than shouting. It's right there in black and white, Diane said coldly. Scientific. Verified. Verified by who? I demanded. My husband finally looked at me. I ordered the test. The words hit me harder than anything else. You did this behind my back? I needed to know. To know what? If you cheated on me. A murmur swept through the room. Karen crossed her arms tightly. Well, she muttered, tests don't just make things up. That's not always true. I snapped. Labs make mistakes. His uncle scoffed loudly. You expect us to believe this is a lab error? Yes, I shot back. Because I know the truth. Diane's eyes narrowed. And what truth is that? I lifted my chin. I have never been unfaithful to your son. The room didn't soften. No one reconsidered. Instead, I saw doubt harden further across their faces. Diane exhaled slowly. I raised my son to be many things, she said. But not a fool. My chest tightened painfully. So that's it? I asked. One piece of paper and you all decide who I am? It's evidence, Karen replied sharply. Evidence of what? I demanded. A result none of you even understand? Then my husband finally spoke again. Then explain it. His voice wasn't angry. It was tired. And somehow, that was worse. Explain how a test says I'm not the father. I opened my mouth. Then closed it. Because how do you explain something you don't understand yourself? I don't know, I admitted shakily. But I know it's wrong. That's not good enough, Diane snapped. Ethan whimpered softly. That tiny sound broke something inside me. He's your grandson, I whispered desperately. Look at him. No one moved. Look at him. My husband hesitated. Diane didn't even glance over. He looks like every toddler, she said dismissively. That proves nothing. The room tilted slightly around me. This is insane, I whispered. No, Diane replied coldly. What's insane is thinking you could deceive this family. The whispers started after that. I always thought something felt off. Poor guy. Raising another man's child. Every word carved another wound into me. But the worst part wasn't them. It was my husband. Standing there silently. Letting it happen. You believe them? I asked quietly. You really think I would do this to you? He hesitated. That hesitation gave me my answer before he even spoke. I don't know what to believe. Something inside me went completely still. Because in that moment, I realized the truth. It didn't matter what I said. They had already decided who I was before I even walked through the door. Diane stepped closer. This has gone on long enough, she said sharply. Leave. I straightened slowly, holding Ethan tighter. I didn't embarrass this family, I said quietly. You did that yourselves. Her face hardened. Get out of my house. The words hung heavy in the room. Final. I looked around one last time at the people I had spent years trying to belong to. Then I nodded once. Okay. I turned toward the door. But before I could open it, it swung inward. A man in a dark suit stepped inside. Excuse me, he said calmly, scanning the room. I'm looking for Mr. and Mrs. Bennett. No one answered. His eyes landed on the DNA papers in my hand. Then he sighed softly. I believe we need to discuss that test. Everything stopped. My pulse thundered. So the test cannot be considered reliable. The room shifted. You could actually feel certainty cracking apart. Daniel reached into his folder and removed another document. We performed an expedited retest using verified samples. My breath caught. And? I whispered. Daniel looked directly at my husband. The probability of paternity is 99.99%. Silence. Absolute silence. No one moved. No one breathed. The truth settled slowly over the room like something heavy finally returning to earth. I closed my eyes briefly. Not because I felt victorious. Because victory would mean none of this had happened. And it had. When I opened my eyes again, my husband was staring at me like he was finally seeing what he'd almost destroyed. He began weakly. But no words came. Diane tried to recover first. There must still be. The second result is conclusive, Daniel interrupted firmly. For the first time all night, Diane had nothing to say. The room that had judged me so confidently now sat trapped inside its own shame. I kissed Ethan's hair gently. This is my son, I said quietly. No one argued. But the silence didn't feel like victory. It felt like aftermath. Because the truth hadn't only exposed the mistake. It exposed everyone. Daniel left shortly afterward, placing corrected documents on the coffee table before quietly walking out. Then it was just us again. Same room. Same people. But now nobody knew where to look. Karen avoided my eyes. My husband's uncle stared at the floor. Even Diane looked shaken. My husband finally stepped closer. I'm sorry. 2 simple words. But they weren't enough. Are you? I asked softly. He flinched. You didn't just doubt me, I continued. You investigated me behind my back. Then you brought me here so your family could watch me be humiliated. No one humiliated you, Diane snapped automatically. I turned toward her slowly. You told me to get out of your house. That shut her up instantly. My husband rubbed a hand over his face. I thought I needed answers. And you decided I wasn't worth asking. Silence. Because there was no defense for that. Finally, he looked at me fully. What happens now? I held Ethan closer. I'm going home, I said quietly. With my son. His face tightened. And then? I met his eyes steadily. Then you decide whether you actually want to rebuild this, or just pretend you didn't break it. This time, nobody stopped me when I walked out. And somehow, that silence felt more honest than anything they'd said all night. The next morning, there was a knock at my door. I already knew who it was. My husband stood outside alone. No mother. No sister. No audience. Just him. He looked exhausted in the kind of way sleep can't fix. Can I come in? I hesitated. Then stepped aside. Ethan looked up from the floor the second he saw him. Dada. My husband froze. Then crouched instinctively as Ethan ran into his arms laughing. No hesitation. No doubt. Just love. My husband held him tightly like he suddenly understood how close he'd come to losing everything. I don't deserve how easy that was, he whispered. No, I said honestly. You don't. He nodded slowly. I let fear turn into suspicion, he admitted. And I let my family's voices become louder than yours. That mattered. Because it was true. I watched them treat you like you didn't belong, he continued quietly. And I didn't stop it. No, I replied softly. You didn't. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he looked at me carefully. I'm not asking you to forget, he said. I'm asking for the chance to earn back what I broke. And somehow, that mattered more than excuses ever could. I studied him for a long time. Then finally, I nodded once. This isn't forgiveness, I said quietly. I know. It's a beginning. His eyes filled with something fragile. That's enough. Weeks passed after that. Trust didn't magically return. It came back slowly. In honest conversations. In questions asked instead of assumptions made. In apologies followed by changed behavior. Even Diane eventually sat across from me one afternoon and admitted quietly. I judged you before I understood. For her, that was monumental. And though it didn't erase the damage, it acknowledged it. Sometimes that's where healing begins. Months later, I sat at the same dining table that once felt like a courtroom and realized something important. Family isn't defined by who stands beside you when things are easy. It's defined by who learns how to stand beside you after they were wrong. Because truth has a way of returning eventually. But trust? Trust is built slowly. Carefully. And never blindly again.